everybody, it's Mrs. Clemens.
And Mr. Marshall.
And this is U.S. History Flipped. Caw-caw! Alright. So anyway, our entire purpose of this is to crack ourselves up and to teach you guys about the American Revolution. This PowerPoint has a million animations because I couldn't decide. So if you happen to see on your slide an American flag, or these crazy fireworks that make a flag, or the thing that says the USA, or the thing that says the Fourth, or the soldier walking, or these things, then you're gonna write. And if you want, you can have your title just be the American Revolution. This, for those of you that don't know, this is from a Beatles song. Beatles, awesome. All right, so on this slide, you are only writing steps leading to the American Revolution. So the reason why you're not writing about the Albany Plan of Union is because I've seen it on the Regents once or twice, but not very often. And so I'm talking about it, but it's not crazy huge for the Regents. But it was created by Benjamin Franklin way back in 1754. And Mr. Marshall, show that you pay attention. What's the one date in U.S. history that we have to memorize?
1776.
Oh my gosh, 1776. So this is 22 years before that. That Benjamin Franklin is saying, hey, maybe we should all unite. And this is the very famous political cartoon that he drew that goes along with that. And he's basically saying, you know, we need to all be together or else we're going to fail apart. All right, so this, you are writing the big part, the committees of correspondence. You do not need to write First Continental Congress, and that's why I made it smaller. So the committees of correspondence, this was a way for the colonists to communicate with each other, basically the leaders in each of the colonies, and it's almost like an email forward or like, you know, a reply all kind of thing, where one person would write the letter in Boston saying, oh my gosh, there was crazy stuff happening. They killed 6 people. It was a massacre. And then they send the letter to someone in New York who then sends, you know, a letter talking about what happened in Massachusetts to somebody in Pennsylvania who sends it to North Carolina, and so on and so forth. And so our good friend Thomas Jefferson starts that. And it definitely was another way, even though they didn't form the Albany Plan of Union, it's another way for them to unite. Now, in our notes in class, we actually mentioned the First Continental Congress, and so they met in 1774 with 55 delegates. And again, they're talking, hey, you know, we want to get along with the king. They're upset with him, though. They're not saying yet that they want to be independent. They're passing this thing called the Declaration of Rights and Grievances, basically just kind of complaining, but they're not yet saying they want to be independent. And then you're not writing this either because there's no animation, but you do get the initial battles. Some people consider it the start of the Revolutionary War. Some people consider the Declaration of Independence the start. But so a year prior to the Declaration of Independence, you get the battles of Lexington and Concord, and you get the phrase shot heard round the world because Britain was just so big and so powerful, and no one had fought against them before. This is the picture, well, a painting of Paul Revere, you know, on his ride to go around and say, the British are coming, the British are coming. Oh, and the clapping.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Ghetto. So anyway, after those battles, they have the Continental Congress meet again, and they call it the Second Continental Congress. And so now they call the militia, just this little group of soldiers around Boston, they call them the Continental Army. And they say, George Washington, we think you would be a great commander-in-chief. And there they are, and here's George Washington, a younger version, saying, oh, yes, that sounds good. And then you also get the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was a pretty crazy battle. We didn't have enough ammunition, and that's where you get the saying, don't fire until you see the, don't shoot or don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. You know, basically meaning don't fire till they're really close. And so here they are, the British were going up the hill, and so the Americans had the advantage that they got to shoot down at them. And so it was another good battle for us. And then on this slide, the only thing you need to write is common sense in this little thing right here. Things are not going bad because now we're up to 3 battles. And so the Second Continental Congress issues this thing called the Olive Branch Petition. And so you know how certain things are symbols, like the eagle's the symbol of America, or the dove is a symbol of peace. Well, the olive branch is also a symbol of peace. And so they say that Mr. Ricard needs to come to the main office. But anyway, it's live. They say that they're still loyal, but they want the British to stop attacking them. At this point, this is when you've gotten your parents so mad that they're past just grounding you and they're like sending you away to military school or something. The king's saying, no way. So now we get to the point where we can't turn back. And so this guy, Thomas Paine, who was British, but had been living in America just for a little bit, he says, you guys have it so good here. You should really go for independence. And so he writes this pamphlet called Common Sense, where he says, guys, it's a no-brainer. Like, go for independence, man. And we're going to be talking about in the future the actual Declaration of Independence. But for right now, for writing it down as a definition, the Declaration of Independence, it was written by Thomas Jefferson, and it borrowed ideas from Enlightenment thinkers. And here's, an idea of what the original looked like. Here's John Hancock's signature. Here's Thomas Jefferson, evidently standing by a table holding the Declaration of Independence. And if you go down to Washington, D.C., you can actually see a copy of it under glass.
So now we're going to get into the war. Right? You got the advantages of each side and the disadvantages of each side that we're going to talk about next. So first, we have the British. Okay? Now, when it comes to the British, they had so many people. I mean, you can see on the slide, 7.5 million versus 2.5 million. So by having that many more people, not only can you have a bigger army, but you also have more people that can, build guns for you and sew uniforms and farm food. So they just have a lot more of a support structure. Not to mention, they had way more money. I mean, they didn't even need to worry about it. If they can't build it, they'll just buy it. It's fine. Which is kind of what they do down here, where you see the Hessians. Those were actually a group of mercenaries that they just hired. So not only do they have their army, not only do they have the loyalists, which were the people over here that wanted to stay with Britain, but they also hire a whole bunch of mercenaries.
And the Hessians were from Germany. Well, what is today Germany?
Yeah. And then on this side, we have the Americans. Okay? And what we had going for us was we had great leadership. I mean, Washington was just amazing. The way he kept everybody together, the way that he was able to organize everybody, and it was just really, really amazing. And you have Benjamin Franklin, the bald-headed guy, okay, who was incredibly important in getting France to help us out. Because without France helping us, it could have gone differently. The amount of ships that they just brought over here was awesome. And the other two you have is fighting to protect your homeland and fighting on the defense. Because fighting on the defense, if you guys do want to ever go into the army and whatnot, it's what's called a force multiplier.
Ooh.
It makes it so that one person is much more effective. And fighting to protect your homeland, you're just going to fight harder when your family's 10 feet behind you in your house.
Yeah, you have the motivation.
Exactly. And then right here we have the disadvantages. So once again, British on the left, American on the right. So the British, they have to go 3,000 miles from home. And we purposely would attack their supply caravans all the time. Partially because we wanted them. We had no supplies to begin with.
We wanted to steal them.
Yeah, we didn't have any bullets yet. We needed to steal your bullets. And because it was so hard for them to get more supplies from Britain. It takes 2 months just to go one way. Right? And they had such a huge territory to conquer. It's not like nowadays where you have roads and cars. No, it's going to take days just to travel from one spot to the next, and the entire army could have moved positions by then. Really, really hard to track people down. Now, our problems were we didn't get along very well. We were still trying to get everybody to be like, okay, you're going over, oh, no, you're over there. All right, well, I'll meet you at 12 o'clock, and wait, hold on, we missed you. You're supposed to go back. We were just trying to get everybody together. We were just trying to form a country. It was very difficult. We had very little military supplies. That's why we tried to steal theirs all the time. And our soldiers were not very well trained. There was desertion. They were running away. So it was pretty tough. Now we're going to talk about some of the different major battles. At the very beginning of the war in New York, it went so bad that there are reports of George Washington getting off his horse, throwing his hat on the ground, and jumping on it. I mean, we lost New York City really, really early on. It was bad.
He threw a hissy fit.
Yeah, George Washington just stamping his feet. Yeah, I don't want to lose. Right? And so next you have the Battle of Trenton. Don't worry, you don't need to write any of this down. And this is one of those paintings that I just love, because you have George Washington standing on his boat, foot on the brow, just looking out into the sea while he attacks the Hessians. Yeah, in real life, they snuck over as quietly as they could and shot a bunch of drunk Germans.
On Christmas.
on Christmas. This painting is rather misleading. The Americans, they're sneaky. They'll shoot you in your bed. Right, then you have the Battle of Saratoga. Once again, you don't need to write it. So the British plan was to try to split the colonies in two. So you have New England and everybody else be separate. But the British armies weren't able to get together. They weren't able to meet up. So we were actually able to kind of like force a chunk of it to fight us, and we won. And that's when Benjamin Franklin was able to convince the French to help us out, and we got tons of support from them.
And it becomes known as the turning point because we got the French to help us.
Yes. Next is Valley Forge, which is more of the army making winter camp, and George Washington really showing his amazing leadership skills with keeping everybody there. Because it was rough. There's no food, very little shelter, not a lot of blankets, but Washington's able to keep everybody together, and it's just amazing that he was able to do that. This one is about the Swamp Fox, which was the entire Southern campaign, which you usually don't hear a lot about, and he just did a great job with, running the British all around the South.
If you watch The Patriot, you kind of see some of the ideas from the Swamp Fox, in terms of, the way that they fought.
And then you have the Battle of Yorktown, which is where we finally forced the British to be like, you guys, you're stuck here. French, with your boats, they can't get away. We win. Yay! So as you guys can see right down here, we kind of push them all the way over to the sea, and then the British come in and don't let them get away. And then we win. Yay! And this is just a different map showing you exactly the same thing.
And all the other battles, you can just kind of see where the battles were fought. So you can pause it and watch it.
Yay.
All right, so the war ends, yay, and they call it the Treaty of Paris. And what that treaty does, it ends the fighting in the war. We get the border all the way to the Mississippi River, which is important for trade and transportation, like we talked about. It said, all right, you got to be nice to those loyalists. We actually weren't, and a lot of them ended up going to Canada, and we were supposed to repay any of our debts, including the tea debt from the Boston Tea Party, which we didn't do. The effects of the revolution are that, you can't treat people the way that Britain treated us with all the blank search warrants and the quartering and all those different things. You're supposed to serve the people and uphold their rights, and that all men are created equal. Oh, hang on, all men that are white. Oh, hang on, all men that are white and have property. So we're going to be talking about, obviously, some of the issues with that. Well, thanks a lot, and
have a good day, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yay.